Screen Printing Club. Well, g'day, welcome to the Aussie Screen Printing Club. This is the inaugural episode. Thanks for joining us. Got a fun guest today in the form of Tyler Fort from the T-Shack. And Tyler's really come to screen printing in a totally different way to everyone else, it seems. And he's got some great business tips and great experience to share with us. So thanks for tuning in again and enjoy the show. Too easy.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Welcome to the inaugural Aussie Screen Printing Club. It's really good to have you, Tyler. Good to see you.
Yeah,
You're pretty relaxed up there.
It is quite relaxing compared to the hecticness that was Geelong for the last few years. I was working 7 days, stupid hours there. So,
oh wow, okay.
So
you enjoying
good.
it up on the hill? It's getting pretty cold. I mean, it was down to single figures the other night. Are you feeling it up there?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Geelong's pretty cold too, but
okay.
It's the house is fairly well insulated, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly fresh, and going to get a lot fresher, I hear. So that should be interesting to experience the snow.
Yeah, the snow. You'll definitely catch a bit of snow up there, which is really nice.
Mm.
Okay, well, look, thanks so much for coming on the show, especially numero uno. It's we know each other a little bit and swap stories a little bit, but thanks a lot for coming on. Now, you've been in the industry for a long while, so can I take you right back to the beginning and just ask you, how did you get involved? How did you start screen printing? Was it a passion from the beginning, or was it just something you fell into? How did it all happen?
Okay, it's not a very interesting story, but the reality is, I wasn't overly interested in school. Although I did do graphics and art, I wasn't overly creative, I guess you'd say, or super interested in that. It's just the other subjects in school I didn't have an interest in either. So I didn't really apply myself in school. I wasn't overly interested. I like joking around, and girls are a bit more of interest to me than
right.
listening to teachers. But anyways, so I had a job at a supermarket as a teenager, and then I worked as a glassy in a bar for a few months, and also helped my cousin. He made hair, shampoo, conditioners, styling products for hairdressers. Mine's full now, as you can see. Yeah, right. But I worked for him briefly too, until I stumbled across a screen printing job on government employment agency Centrelink back in, must have been 98. And I thought, that could be interesting. So applied for the job. There was, I think, one or two other applicants, and one of the guys I went on to become friends with just by chance. And he mentioned that he applied for the job, and he'd actually done a short course or something after high school regarding screen printing. So he was a little bit angry that I got the job in the end with zero experience. So yeah, it wasn't exactly something I was passionate about. I never actually did screen printing in school. I speak to a lot of people that when they walk into my old shops, they'd say, "Oh wow, what a setup! This is great. So interesting." I said, "Oh, I did screen printing in school once." And I said, "Yeah, I never did." But so I wasn't like that, and then applied for a job. I just stumbled across the job, and I've never really left it after 24 years. So although it was maybe 10 years ago, for about 10 years, I've been printing Rash Vest predominantly for Rip Curl. That was the majority of my workload. And that kept me very busy without having employees. So I didn't have a lot of time to do anything but work. That was a 7-day thing, 60 plus hours a week. My partner at the time was helping a little, and my mother was also helping sometimes. So
family deal. Yeah,
I sold off most of the big equipment and was going to try something different, and took a little bit of time off And before long, people were emailing and calling and saying, "You're not in the shed anymore. Or are you still screen printing?" And I thought I need an income. So I worked from my garage for a little while and then built the business back up again until, I had an automatic machine and a large tunnel dryer, a couple of manual machines. Still only me being the only employee, sole trader. I've never really had a great desire to employ people. I've been a bit nervous of it, I guess, because I've never done it, and I didn't really want to be responsible for someone else's livelihood if I failed that.
I get that.
Yeah, so it was last year. It was a good time to sell my house.
For sure.
So I did that and looked at a tree change. So scaled things back a bit, sold off my automatic carousel, and I'm just working with a nice quality, manual 6x6 machine, Antec Legend. So
that's a really interesting story, kind of like, in a sense, going full circle maybe, and we'll come back to that. But to kind of step down and change your lifestyle and go back to a manual, it could be a lot of screen printers' dreams in a way, because of the headache that comes when you start to kind of expand and go to an auto and everything. But when you first got that job, or you got that first job, did you start on a press, or were you just reclaiming screens, or what did they put you into?
I started on the automatic carousel loading.
Wow. Okay.
Loading rush vests. Yeah.
Okay.
And before long, I was printing neoprene panels for wetsuits, before they sew them up, obviously. Printed, there weren't huge quantities, but we were doing some of them for Rip Curl also for the first couple of years I was there. But yeah, straight into loading on an automatic. And because we were doing this, there was 3 or 4 different designs for Rip Curl per season. We weren't going through a whole heap of screens because we didn't really have any other business besides Rip Curl when I started there. Right. So it wasn't, we needed to clean 50, 100 screens a week. My boss probably cleaned the 5 or 10 that there was per week to do. So
what a gift to, that's another nightmare, isn't it, in screen printing? If you're kicking through, like you say, 50 or 100 screens, somebody's got to reclaim them and, get them recoded as well. Depending on how many screens you've got. You sometimes hear about shops that have got, go through 1,000 screens a day, obviously big warehouse printers, and you think, wow. And they're still running a team incredible before they move to like an Ecotex, all clean system.
That's right.
Me to do that. Okay, so and how long did you stay with those guys? You there for a long time, or?
My boss, he dangled a carrot after about 7 years or so, 6 or 7 years, and said, you can have this business when I retire, meaning buy. And I did talk him down. I think I paid 30,000 for the business in the end. He wanted 50, and I said, I'm almost due for when he retired. I was just short of 10 years working for him. So I said, look, I'm pretty much due for long service leave here. And according to my calculations, the equipment is only worth about $25,000 or $30,000. There's no goodwill in the business. I was able to purchase it for $30,000 after 10 years working for that boss, on the the minimum wage, obviously. Not many bosses pay more than they need to, do they? But
no.
He wasn't the worst boss. He was okay, but I never had a sick day, and unfortunately, I'm in good health, and I think I had like one or 2 sick days all that time. I was hungover quite a bit on a Saturday if I worked Saturday mornings.
Typical screen printer.
Yeah, that's right. But I was a loyal employee to my boss. I didn't screw him around. So it was 10 years working for him.
So it was your boss and yourself. Your boss retired. You took on the business, and it went down to one. And it might not have made a huge difference if your boss wasn't doing much. But did you then sort of say? And was the company called T-Shack initially, or did you change the name? Or
no? Originally, when I started there was my boss and another boss that had the business, and it was called Commercial Screen and Print. And there were 2 guys a little bit older than me working there. They were, say, early 20s, and I was 19 or the mid 20s. And the bosses had worked together at a glass manufacturing business in Geelong, Pilkington Glass.
Oh, wow.
And they worked in the screen room making the hotlines for rear demisters on cars that are screen printed with a silver particle ink. So they were doing that, and also windscreens have a black border around them, black bands, and they also, you know, made the screens for that. And they were hand cutting the positives, the hotlines with, you know, 2 scalpel blades together, separated, you know, 0.6 of a mil or whatever to cut the band, the hotline. So they had the screen making experience, and for whatever reason, they decided, let's get into screen printing. And they had a contract, without it being a contract, with Rip Curl, and also Hardcore Industries. That there were several labels under Hardcore, being Mooks, Mossimo, 4-Star. I don't think Stussy was one of them. Numerous anyway. And I think my boss's partner had that connection somehow. So it was after maybe 2 years of me working there, the bosses went their separate ways, and my boss renamed his business Screen Tech, which I then traded under the Screen Tech name for about 7 or 8 years after I purchased the business from him. And it was when I bought a direct-to-garment printer from a bloke that was moving back to Burma, where he was born. He had a direct-to-garment, a brother machine, and heat press, 24-inch Mimaki vinyl cutter, and a hat press that I bought off him for a very good price. And he was using the T-Shack name, and I thought, that's a great name, you know, do you mind if I, you know, what are you doing with the name? And he said, well, I don't have the intention of coming back to Australia, so, you know, if you want it, go for it. So yeah, I've been T-Shack for 5 years now. So I always wanted to change the name when I bought the business, but I guess people knew Screen Tech to some extent, and the cost and the admin part of switching it all over. I thought, I'll just keep it for now, and I just kept on keeping it.
Going. Yeah, you gradually switched. So I think it's a great name, by the way. You know, T-shirt company names, wild and varied, from kind of super conservative to more kind of stylized. And I think,
yeah, sadly, I can't take credit for the name, but
you can take credit for identifying it and saying, can I have that? So
sure.
Going back to that operation, so you had an auto. Tell us about the auto. What was it?
I was sorry,
what size was it? How many platens and so on?
Yeah, it was a TAS branded, you know, TAS made in Melbourne. 8 color, 10 station.
Nice.
What was it? Maybe a late. I don't know the specifics of it, unfortunately. Late 90s model, I believe. It was an all air machine before the electronic heads were a thing. But a good solid machine. You know, it's. I don't remember it ever having any issues in the 15 years or so I had it, or worked on it. It was pretty amazing because my boss's partner bought one that was in good nick, I think, from WA, and was flown over to Geelong or trucked over or whatever. And he had issues with that, numerous issues. A damper, I think, one of the rotating piston thing, what's it called? Pneumatic cylinder, whatever. I think that that played up. He had numerous air leaks in the heads constantly, or having to replace the bushes, I think they are. So yeah, it was a TAS 8 color, which was sufficient. I did actually do some sampling for Rip Curl, which was a constant thing twice a year, and I did an 8 color on that using one of the loading or unloading stations as a flash station, and did an 8 color like that. You know, 20 sample prints on neoprene panels for pencil cases. It took me, you know, most of the day to set up the 8 colors, mix the ink, and print each color twice, going around flashing.
Flashing it. Doing a
30,
cycle mode.
30 panels, But
just to get that 8th color. So normally it'd be a 7 color plus the flash, or was it an 8 color plus the flash normally?
This was an 8-color plus a flash.
Oh yeah, right. So you
the unloading station. So
yeah, right. Gotcha.
Because it was just sampling, I couldn't have done production like that, really. Yeah, because there wasn't even a white base on these. There was 8 colors,
Oh, wow.
so I printed each color twice, around and around
right.
and around. It took forever, but most of the rip curl prints were 3 or 4 colors. So the 8-color was an 8-color carousel was sufficient.
I've heard of people doing that, taking the flash and putting it on the unloading platen if you've got the 2 platens, and just buys you that extra head, an extra color to print. Yeah, so it didn't even have an underbase, so it was 8 raw colors. That's really cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
And tell me about flash. I mean, was the flash just a TAS one again, or was it?
Yeah, it was. It was the black, the radiant panel. What infrared? Yeah.
Infrared
panel. My boss did also purchase a large being, was probably 50 by 80, 90 centimeter deep quartz tube flash unit from Jones Brothers.
Yep.
That I still had until recently. Only had a sensor on the front of it, which was it did play up after numerous years. That was used mostly on a manual machine, flashing 0.5 millimeter neoprene panels. These things rip curl called hot skins, and hot skins from memory. That's right, yeah. And so I had a colleague work with me, because at one point my boss employed, I think, 3 or 4 people. And then that dwindled back to me being the first on, so the last off, and obviously I had the carrot dangled in front of me. So
yeah, no, absolutely.
But yeah, that flash unit was not cheap, way back, probably 20 years ago, and I still had it until I moved here at the start of the year, and it went to the scrap heap because it had a problem, and it was a 3-phase unit, so it wasn't any good to me, and I didn't want to sell a problem that
good on you.
Probably wasn't a cheap or easy fix. So
and it's sort of done its time. So did you run a manual as well in that shop, or was it just the auto? Like, did you do anything like specialized stuff on a manual?
Yeah, back in the day, it was there were 2 manuals there also, but they were single station manuals. There's a mob in Melbourne that still make ovens. I don't know if they make carousels, possibly, called Reservoir Engineering. I'm actually running a little electric dryer now, Reservoir Engineering, which would be 35 years old, I guess. I hadn't used it in 7 years until just now. The other month I plugged it in, and it had sat outside, undercover, but outside at my house for at least 2 years. I had a sheet over it, but plugged it in and away it goes. So ceramic elements, whatever it is, 80 centimeter dryer, still goes. So they make good quality stuff. But yeah, we were using a single station manual there to do small quantity stuff, and it was all rip curl. In the end, there were a few new customers that came along, drama groups, or a drama group from Geelong. What else was there? There wasn't a whole lot. I mean, we were in the Yellow Pages phone book, but my boss didn't advertise. We didn't have a computer.
Okay.
He used to have the films made at some processing place in Geelong, like Office Works, I guess. So yeah, someone would come and say, "Oh, I want this image put on screen." He said, "Oh, go to this place in town, Cavalier Digital Prints," and he said, "Ask them to print it onto a transparency and then bring it back, and we'll make the screen."
Okay.
So yeah, it was pretty old school. My boss, he knew how to screen print. Obviously, it's not that difficult to learn how to print manually, but he didn't understand how to run the automatic, because his partner, had the know-how about that, and so he never ran that. I was running the machine. He would go out just in the years leading up to me taking over. He would take his wife here, there. She never drove, and I was just running the machine and doing the whole operation. So I had no qualms in taking over the business, besides not knowing the admin side of it.
Yeah.
And up until a year before me taking over, I hadn't really used a computer myself since leaving school. You know, this was 95, I think, year 10. I did infotech, didn't pay a lot of attention, and there wasn't a lot going on there anyway. I think that was 1 year I did IT, and then forgot about it, didn't touch a computer for 10 years. And yeah, just before purchasing the business, I thought, I better get a computer and learn how to do emails.
Yeah, right. Wow. That's cool. And you learn everything, right? I mean, they burnt screens themselves. They just had the film outsourced. They burnt screens and reclaimed screens, and you kind of got around all of that stuff. But it sounded like that there was the computer part that was missing. I mean, obviously now you you burn your own screens, you print your own film. So you learn Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, that's right. I still can't really use Photoshop. I've never had a need for it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But yeah, you know, self-taught with Illustrator, of which also I don't know. I probably know 10 or 20% of how to use it. You know, just separating the colors, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not a designer. I don't do design. Typography, sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's for what I need. People have the artwork ready to go, separate the colors,
just separate them. It's interesting that, because I find a lot of people that start out perhaps on Photoshop, maybe, you know, editing photos, which is of course what it's for, and to, you know, take that into screen printing and carry on with those skills, and they never really explore Adobe Illustrator. And it seems like there's quite a hard crossover. We run both here, and I know, trying to, you know, do proper separations, especially if you've got simulated process or something, you really need to use Illustrator. You can do it in Photoshop, but the results aren't as good. But it seems like a lot of people struggle to jump from one to the other.
Yeah.
There seems to be a learning curve. And I hate the fact that Adobe just have totally different shortcuts and different concepts around the shortcuts, you know, in Illustrator as opposed to Photoshop. But yeah, we used to use Photoshop, but we more or less exclusively use Illustrator now.
Yeah.
It just seems to be that bit sharper on the film, to be honest.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so you got into all of that, and then you had to learn all the business stuff. What kind of challenges do you remember around the business stuff?
Well, if I'm completely honest, none really, because it's a fairly blurred time for me going casting my mind back that far. And you know, I will be completely honest, because that's who I am. My mother actually helped with most of the invoicing, and we were handwriting invoices, because that's what my boss did, obviously, not having a computer. So you know, I was writing invoices at times, but other times mum was doing that also. And the tax part of it, you know, mum would help with that, and then the accountant, of course. But it was just another thing that needed to be done, I guess, once I did take over the business, the boss. But in terms of challenges, well, none really, because it was handwriting invoices. There's nothing particularly difficult about that. And again, like I said, it was a long time ago now. It's not 30 or 40 years, obviously, but it's long enough.
20 years, or
long enough for my memory.
When did you take it over? What year was that?
15 years ago.
Okay, a long time ago. You know, from my days in management consulting, there's this concept that we used to kind of explain to people about technology in particular, when businesses were migrating from kind of like a terrestrial world to a digital world, if you will. Not an extraterrestrial, just terrestrial. Some companies would deliberately hold back that innovation, and they'd work, you know, on, particularly in manufacturing at that point, work on their processes and really refine those processes, which of course meant it was very labor intensive. And then they would gradually make that jump, and it was a jump that was the important part. We used to call it leapfrogging into technology. And then they just bandage the two together and work out the efficiencies. There was actually some benefit in doing that, because as we know with most things, but especially with technology, there's this evolution. Things
Yep.
start with little things and they get better and better and so on. And people
Mm.
make huge investments in systems and processes around systems that just keep changing. And so for some people, they held back and then they made this jump and invested. And they then, were totally up to speed with something that was brand new. And the culture shock just happened then. And it was much better. So that is actually a practice in certain types of organization, or has been. I guess most people are there now. So you probably benefited in a way from that, doing it
Possibly.
that way.
Yeah. I'll never know, I guess.
Yeah. And look, on the business stuff, really want this podcast to look at the kind of business angle as well as, the technical angle of screen printing and the way we do things. What I found, because I'm from the UK and I've run lots of different types of businesses, the bureaucracy in Australia is actually much thicker in terms of the morass that you have to get through, but it's actually much simpler and much more straightforward, which of course I really appreciate. Taxation system simpler, So,
sure.
I've kind of appreciated learning that. I've only run 2 companies in Australia, and both of them were companies. And, when I first did one, I thought, oh my goodness, this is just going on and on and on and on. But then I realized it was a lot more straightforward. So in a way, kind of more transparent. Okay. So you started to diversify. You mentioned you got some drama groups and other types of customers, but you weren't marketing. They just came to you. Is that what happened?
That's right. Yeah, I never advertised myself either. I did live with my boss's son and a friend of his, and these blokes were 7 or 8 years older than me. I lived with them for a year or so, and met some of their friends. And one of my boss's friends, I bumped into, I think just after I took over from my boss when I bought the business, and I bumped into him at the Geelong races, the horse races, and he said, you're still working for George's old man. And I said, yeah, I've just bought the business off him, actually. He said, oh, wow, congratulations. He said, I might be able to send some work your way. So he and another friend, Scott Austin, who's the cousin of Nigel Austin of Cotton On fame.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This bloke that was a client of mine, was friends with Nigel's cousin, I believe, Scott Austin. And also the Austins have Austin wines, which are fairly well known in Australia, at least now. Getting off topic here, sorry.
No, it's good.
Scott Austin and this client of mine, Stefan, did have a clothing label. I think it was just one called Spy Whack, something like that. Must have been 17, 18 years ago. I'm not sure how long that was around for, only a few years, I believe, but they had a crack. And then my client, Stefan, he was involved with equestrian events. So, and he's still doing that. He's mostly manufacturing, polo shirts and jackets, puffer jackets and things like that in China, and embroidering them there. I don't touch that stuff, the equestrian stuff. But he has some other customers like what, I don't deal with. When I moved up here, start of the year, he told me it wasn't going to work for him, freighting goods back and forth interstate. So I was fairly happy about that, even though it was a long-standing relationship between us. I did work for him for close to 15 years, I guess. And for a while there, he was probably my main client, give me the most work. But I also, after selling the automatic machine, when I was working 7 days doing rip curl stuff and going, this isn't life, working 60, 70 hours a week, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
I might do this my whole life and not experience anything else, and not travel and not make a great deal of money, because obviously you're limited when you don't employ anyone, you're limited to the money you can make. So I thought I was just being a bit foolish, spending all my time working and not really making any money. So when I sold that stuff off and then started working from the garage, when people were asking, you know, you're still printing, like, where have you gone? You're not in the shed. It was this guy, after a while, after a few months, he said, why don't you move in with me, you know, move into the shed here? And I said, well, I'm not paying any rent at home, mate. Why would I want to move in with you and pay you? He goes, oh, I'll look after you, you know. So that was cheap. You know, I had my manual there and the dryer, but there wasn't room for a wash trough or, you know, dark room. So I was doing that at home, which was nearby. It was 2 kilometers away, but taking screens back and forth became tiresome. After a year or so, the shed behind him became vacant, and I moved in there and started accumulating more equipment and getting busier. And because this bloke was right next door to me, he'd come and see me pretty much every single day, go outside for a smoke, and he'd walk down the driveway and he'd sort of hassle me and say, you know, well, what are you working on? You know? And I'd say, well, you know, not your stuff. And he said, well, why not? You know, I pay your bills straight away. And it's like, well, I need to do some of my clients' work also. You know, I need to do that in a timely manner. And I just had that pressure with him being next door. So the last 2.5 years, when I purchased the automatic machine, and then I was working, you know, in a bigger factory there before moving the start of this year, I was so glad to move away from him because he didn't have that over me, and I didn't feel the pressure to prioritize his work. But
you need that kind of freedom, don't you, as a boss? You need to be able to make those decisions and not be beholden to your customers, whatever size or whatever arrangement you've got with them. It can be very daunting when people are constantly at you for performance or for product and so on.
It was frustrating because you know, I didn't exactly have a friendship with this guy. I mean, I knew him from way back when I lived with my boss's son, and he was a likable kind of guy, I guess. But yeah, I just didn't really appreciate the type of personality that he is. All for himself kind of thing, you know. And
sure, so many people are like that.
Yeah.
No, so I get the story straight. So I got it in my head. So you applied for the job, started working for these guys, straight onto the auto, loading and unloading and so on. And then you purchased the business. Then it sounded like you moved to your home, to your garage. Is that what the next stage was? And then you moved with this other guy.
Yes.
And then you kind of grew again. Yeah. Okay. Yep. So is it the case that you're a particular size when you purchased the business, kind of downsized and then grew again? And then...
Yeah, that's right. It was when I sold off the automatic, and what I told Rip Curl, sorry, I'm getting out. You'll need to find someone else to do the printing. And this was, mind you, I'll finish that story, but you're correct in your analysis there. I was going to do something else before long. I was printing for my garage, moved in with this other client.
Gotcha.
For it might have been close to a year until the shed behind his became vacant. Accumulated some more stuff. Actually bought a 4-color automatic, the first automatic machine TAS ever made in the early 80s.
Wow.
A sign writer had it in remote, you know, an hour northeast of Adelaide. And I drove over there with my wife, hired an enclosed trailer, one-way trailer to drag the thing back. And I purchased it for, I think, $300 because this guy bought it for $4 or $5 grand a few years earlier.
Yeah.
It blew some kind of seal inside the main shaft that lifted the 4 heads at once. This machine was known as a pterodactyl, this 4-color TAS. And there's still a couple in the country. I think Screen Fiend in Melbourne had one of these. They don't anymore. But yeah, that's sort of, as soon as I got that machine up and running, figured out what the problem was. The seal was cracked on one side, and I flipped it over, and then the machine worked. So I didn't really need to spend any money on it. Get it up and running, and I was, you know, printing just single color with the 2 screens, you know, print flash print.
Yeah.
And it was easy, you know, not put the screen down and dragging the squeegee yourself. And at that point, I thought to myself, yep, I need to get myself another auto. And it was probably 2 or 3 years after that, an electric head TAS became available from Collingwood. I bought that from While You Sleep screen printing. They upgraded to M&R. They've got 2 M&R machines out. They had 2 TASs, but they've jumped ship. Yeah, built the business back up again. And yeah, and here I am just printing for my main client, which was a workwear provider in Geelong. They're sending work up to me, 1,400 k's away. And that's, I still do hear from some of my old clients. Well, I have thus far anyway, and will continue to, and send them work also. But yeah, it's busy again. You know, I'm still here working most days.
But not 60, 70 hours a week.
Not quite, no.
You got your life back somehow.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of good working from home now. You know, not dealing with customers at all. I can I can work my own hours, but this house having solar panels, I like the idea of working during the day and utilizing that free electricity. But you know, old habits die hard, and I'm not really a morning person, so I find it hard to get up before 8 o'clock. Sometimes it's 9 or even a bit after that. And if there's other things to do, you know, I get distracted. I might not get to work until late in the afternoon, and then work late into the evening.
That's great.
But it's good to be able to do it, you know, and I just speak to my wife if I need a hand unloading shirts or emptying the box at the back of the oven, or whatever it might be. I just, you know, walk through the door there and, you know, call out to my wife and say, hey, can you give me a hand with this, please? It's just here. I can stop for, you know, 5 minutes and watch the idiot box, or, you know, just have a break for a bit and then step back into the garage and back into it. But
it's fascinating to me because you've come such a different route to get there. You know, when you speak to screen printers, they'll tell you, I started in my bedroom, I started in my garage, you know, and it gradually grew, and I moved from a 1 color to a 4 and a 6 and a 8, and then I moved out to another shop and eventually got an auto and so on. And it's this idea that somehow bigger is better, bigger will be more money, and that can happen, right? We know that, but the reality often is bigger is more headaches. Staff, you mentioned staff earlier, you know, that's you know, like you said, to kind of have someone else's mortgage in the back of your mind to make sure you're employing them, able to pay them is very stressful. But you've done the opposite in a way, in that you've cut your teeth on the really big stuff, right? Rip curl on an auto, you know, and you've gone to different places and built and you know, tried to change your life in terms of maybe move on to something else and come back to it. Your customers have called you back, but now you've made this tree change and you've got this free time, you know, and it sounds to me worth its weight in gold. You know, I'm usually here till 9 most nights. I have different things on, and you know, it's not always work, but it can be very stressful. So tell me about that. You know, how did you make that decision? I mean, obviously you traveled a long way from Geelong, and you saw a different lifestyle in the bush, as it were. But what was it that finally tripped the decision that you guys said, we're gonna move to the country?
Well, I mean, I guess the fact my wife and I were unable to have children probably means that's probably, I guess, the reason why I'm not quite as serious about being financially successful, and I've been a little bit floaty in what I do with this business, because, you know, we're not raising a family, so you know, that is unfortunate, but we've come to accept that, and that's fine with us. You know, we've got a cat and a galah, and a dog would be good, but you know, the cat wouldn't like that until, you know, she's getting on. So after that, probably get a dog. But you know, we're animal lovers. And you know, we've got a bit of space here to potentially, you know, hopefully get some chickens, and you know, maybe some sheep or goats potentially, just to keep the lawn mowed. So that's, even though there's a ride on here, which is kind of fun in the initial stages. The novelty of that will wear off too. But yeah, just have some animals, and you know, they're our children, I guess. Yeah, we don't have that, I guess, that same thing in our heads that all parents have. You know, they need to provide, and I guess as soon as you become a parent, you know, your whole focus, I guess, shifts, doesn't it? People say, oh, you know, the same thing. Oh, I've never known love like, you know, when I held my kid for the first time, and you know, you have that responsibility financially to make the best decisions and ensure that you've got food on the table. And you know, I don't mind starving, so
yeah, right. Yeah, you might starve your child, but you don't mind going hungry yourself. Yeah,
no, that's right.
It is true. You know, I've got 4 children. I think you know that. One of them's a part owner in the business here and works. She runs the production, as you know, and it gets more expensive. I mean, you know, it's wonderful. We love our kids. 3 of them are married, and that takes some of that burden and pressure off. But it is a pressure, you know, and I dare say that's affected me personally very badly, in the sense that I've always kind of hunted the dollar or the pound, in my case back in the UK, very aggressively because of that. And I guess, you know, just innate kind of ambition in a way. But yeah, so you've got this new lifestyle.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't answer your question.
No, it's all good. No, you're getting there. And it's freed up your time. It's changed you know, your relationship with work, and I guess the kind of environment, right? The
that's
surroundings
right,
that you're in.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't. Ideally, neither of us would have chosen to move to such a cool climate for a good part of the year, where it snows up here. But you know, my wife and I decided we wanted to move somewhere to become more self-sufficient. You know, we've been plant-based or vegan, if you like. We're not, you know, militant vegans. We don't carry on to people about it. Oh, you shouldn't eat meat, all that. People can do what they like, but you know, we haven't eaten meat for 6 years now. And my wife does most of the cooking, and she's a wonderful cook. Thanks, babe. I try, but I'm not as good as her with the meal preparation. But you know, we thought if we can buy a property that has some land or has fruit trees, obviously you can put solar on. But this house came up where I searched for a house that had fruit trees and solar, and this came up, and it was sort of halfway up, you know, to the tip of Queensland, and I went, oh, that looks like it'd be sort of warm climate. Looked at the house and went, that looks great. Some space outside there, you know, double garage, can work out of there. And yeah, we thought that looks good. I can't remember whether we were bidding on the place or was the successful bidder when we discovered the altitude that Black Mountain is, but it's almost the highest city or highest town in Australia. So it's it gets cold. It does get some snow, so as you're aware.
I'm aware. I mean, Armidale, I think it has the you know, moniker, if you will, of being the highest city, and I know that, you know, you're plenty of feet higher, meters I should say, where we are. And I mean, just driving up the highway, sometimes it's, you know, pretty clear here, and you get up the hill a bit and you start to see snow. I mean, you know, it is that bit higher, and it's going to be cool. But I personally really love the lifestyle in the rural regional Australia, in Armidale.
Yeah, exactly.
Around the New England area, Northern Tablelands. And often think, well, you know, you haven't quite got everything you need, but you're pretty close. And frankly, you know, it doesn't take much to go somewhere fairly near and find that too. And you've got an airport as well if you need to jump back to Geelong or wherever. Just going back to screen printing. So you were saying earlier on that, you know, you had to get a computer and these things were new or relatively new. But you are now on Facebook and you're on Instagram, I think. Is that right?
Well, I mean, when it was 3 years ago, I guess, we moved to that other location when I acquired the automatic machine. It was then we decided we should maybe push the business a little bit and, get an Instagram account. So that was short-lived. I uploaded, 7 or 8 images, I think, or whatever it was, not many.
Yeah.
And we were busy again with my main client now that I've been working for 3 or 4 years, the workwear provider, that are a franchise. But them and that other client that I worked for also, I was mentioning before, and a few others. So I was busy, and we didn't need to push the Instagram, and it kind of just got forgotten about. But yeah, if you're talking about me and break or learning technology and things like that, I'm still not really across it. I prefer to use my phone to write emails. I'm not very I'm not great with the keyboard. I'm single finger type kind of thing. So
you might as well use a phone. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. As much as, I see, and I don't like the addiction that everybody seems to have with phones and just being glued to them so much. It's not a good thing. But I did need to obviously embrace to run a screen printing business. I needed to learn Illustrator and emailing, things like that. But I wasn't talking with clients and things via email much. It was because I had these main clients that were I've done mostly contract printing, for Rip Curl originally, and then this workwear provider and the other bloke that was involved with the equestrian work, the other jobs that he was giving me, people were dropping work to me, and I'd either drop it back to them or they'd come and pick it up. So that was good in a way. I didn't need to advertise. I didn't need to be emailing clients or have an employee, my wife or whoever, helping with that side of things. But of course, there's limitations in, well, if you're not providing the garment and marking that up, I was only getting money for 95% of my work by printing alone, not the garment markup. So it wasn't as easy money. I thought it was great not having to deal with the clients, because that there can be tire kickers, and you don't know how long you might be sitting with the client for. But I think upon reflection, I think I probably did that the wrong way, and I should have been looking for, maybe approaching some bigger businesses and trying to get work from them, or advertising and seeing where that may go, and dealing with more people to provide the garments for them, because I've never made good money in this business. I guess because of my lack of drive to make good money. I thought it was good doing contract printing, but you can only do so much when you're a one-man band. So
for sure. And look, I mean, in a way that's kind of prevented you from getting super big and not being able to take the lifestyle choice that you're in now. There's a benefit to that as well. I mean, look, we love all our customers, the ones that pay, and the ones that don't, you still try and love. I mean, customer service is so important, but man, they can be so demanding. And you often hear that kind of analogy of, the big customers that buy 1,000 garments, never give you any hassle. And then you have a customer comes on for 20 and they're just a total nightmare. And in some cases, what we found is, we try and do most of our work online, and occasionally we have a walk-in, but we're not so much set up for that. We're national, as it were. You might have a customer that, you forget about, right? Like, you put a quote out to them, some mock-ups out to them, and 6 months later they come back and okay. You might have another customer that purchases in the same day, and then you might have another customer that just goes back and forth for ages, and it becomes completely unviable financially. But you're in the process, you kind of have to fulfill it. Some of them are so demanding. We had a great one yesterday, Tyler. I won't say who it was, but a customer who's going through a big quote for someone in the medical fraternity, and they must have some connection with some restaurants in Brisbane. And they said, look, if we tack on these other there's two different restaurants. We tack on these other prints, will you give us a discount? I was trying to explain, well, that's ostensibly
Right.
that's a different print job. And, so,
Yeah.
we try to work out a deal.
Yeah.
And when I thought we'd got to the deal, the customer said, and this was just yesterday, so Friday, for those listening, they said, can we have them by Wednesday next week? And I said, look, you just don't understand screen printing. Now, the sad thing is, I then said, but we have an express service. Oh, how much extra is that? For us, that's 30%, right? Because we just don't want them, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they say, well, if we pay the 30%, will we definitely get it on Wednesday? I said, well, it's again, we can't guarantee, Now we will, they went for it and they paid up straight away.
Yeah, well.
And we will do everything we can, right, to get that to Brisbane by Wednesday.
Yeah,
but
wow.
It's pretty unlikely.
Yeah.
But
you have the stock there, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think we got to get in some ladies' AS Colour shirts. I think that was part of the order.
Yeah.
So they may not be here, but we'll try and get everything else. The film's done. I just came in this morning to do the film. But you know what I mean? Like, the more customers you have, the more headaches you have in a way. And so even if you're not making a markup on the garment, you've got steady work. You haven't got to deal with all these other people. The customer well, they know you well.
That's
huge
right.
benefits. And again, you're able to get the freedom you want in the country now.
Yes.
So on screen printing, this is a question I love to ask screen printers. Putting your current customers to one side for a sec, if you could print any kind of job on a t-shirt, let's say, full color simulated process, don't tell me print flash print is your favorite, but what would be your favorite in terms of the type of print that you might want to do, discharge or
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to suggest, and hence why I'm wearing this t-shirt. And you've seen before, but this is a discharge. Dave Thomas, who was a founding guitarist in a Geelong band called Board. That was it might have been Plas-Charge, slightly grey ink color. Obviously they're easy, and they sort of a bit magic when they come out the oven. That, or this other shirt here that printed, which is a sim process job. I've done I've done probably 3 sim process jobs, and they were all in recent years, because I just didn't have nobody asked for it. This is a local hotel, the Barn Club Hotel in Geelong, that Board, the band, where they sort of started out there, and a lot of international bands have played at the Barn Club. They're a small venue, so that it's not 1,000-person capacity venue. I think it's 300 or 400, but they've had an annual festival, the River Rocks Festival, for probably 10 years, just a day festival there. So I've been printing their shirts for the last few years, and the guy that runs that asked me to print these tribute shirts for Dave's widow, to help her out a little bit. But stim process jobs, obviously they're good fun, particularly when you don't do them all the time. Some people that do a whole lot of them may find it a bit tedious in the setup and things like that, but that's good fun. I do like when the graphics are cool like that, considering most of the work that I've done have just been for tradesmen, particularly the last few years. Rip Curl was just these handful, 3 or 4 different designs for that 6 months, and I found that fairly kind of boring. But tradies and text on shirts, left chest and back, on high vis gear and things like that. That's mostly what I do. And there's no interesting graphic element to most of the stuff I do. So I don't overly enjoy most of the print jobs that I do. I find them visually boring, but I do like. I've always enjoyed the challenge of getting the job set up quick and getting onto it and doing a good job of it. I've maintained my customers all these years because they know I'm particular about quality, and that's another reason why was always hesitant to employ someone because I thought they're going to make mistakes, and that's going to cost time in setting the job up again and replacing the garments that they burn, or they print in the wrong position, things like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that headache, and I didn't want my reputation to be tarnished by someone, particularly if I'm not there and they're getting a job out and it's, the image is out of position, things like that. Or, you have sublimation issues with, poly blends, things like that. My name being, or my reputation being tarnished, it was mostly not wanting to be responsible for someone else's livelihood, because I guess I doubted my ability in being able to go to that next level and generate more work to employ people. But yeah, that's something I've always prided myself on. Being really particular about quality. So as much as the prints have been not great, lacking graphics most of the time, kind of boring print jobs.
It's your bread and butter, isn't it? I mean, we've got to do those as well as the nice ones. And when the fun ones come along, you get super excited. When you move it from film to the press and see the outcome. Okay, so my next question for you is about inks. I mean, we've mentioned discharge inks there and simulated process in terms of color. Plastisol, water-based, either or you've strictly one or the other?
I haven't really done, I've done very little water-based printing. Probably 10 years ago, I attempted something that was 3 or 4 colors water-based, and it was summer. It was fairly warm. I just had problems with the screens drying, the images getting dried up, and I just found it painful. As much as water-based ink has that great hand feel, and I was always, for some years, I was very keen to be more eco-friendly and do more water-based printing. I haven't had the request from my clients to do it. They've been happy with Plastisol, the workwear gear I print for tradies. They don't specify. I don't know if it's really possible to I guess it's possible if you know the inks. There's sub-blocker water-based inks. I know there are, even though I'm not familiar with all of the products and the different brands. I've used Plastisol forever. Plastisol with Wilflex ink with stretch additive in it. I used for the rash vest for rip curl. And I've been buying Union inks for some years now. I did buy some other inks. There was a distributor in Melbourne that's no longer around now, the Ink Dude, and he was selling Excalibur inks, plus some inks that were pretty good value, I believe, and there was another printer in Geelong that was using them first, so I sort of went on his recommendation and tried those, and I was happy with them. The Ink Dude was also importing Matsui inks, water-based inks, from America, and I believe he was the only distributor in Australia, and I believe he was owed quite a bit of money, so he got out of doing that, and I heard he had actually gone into screen printing himself. But that was a bit of a shame because I had dabbled a little bit in water-based inks, and I thought Matsui inks were good. Even though I didn't have the need to use water-based inks, as I said, I dabbled with them a bit. But Union is predominantly what I buy now. I do use Rutland, white.
So you wouldn't use Wilflex over what Rutland? Just out of interest, you mentioned Wilflex earlier.
Yeah, I guess they were one of the more expensive inks, and it wasn't a matter of needing to save the money. I just thought, well, if I can buy something that works for less, then why not? I needed to use Wilflex, or at least it was 9 years I worked for the boss, and that's the ink that we used.
Yeah, okay.
So
And so with the Rutland whites, you use Street Fighter or
that's right, Street Fighter,
or-
and cotton white.
yeah,
I buy 20-liter tubs, which last me 6 to 12 months probably. So
yeah, okay.
I don't have the names in the top of my head, unfortunately.
No,
Yeah,
no,
the
yeah.
cotton white Rutland, and the Street Fighter, and I use the barrier base. I think that's a Rutland too, the grey barrier base for
Grey Barrier, yeah, that's got a name too. We use that.
does. Yeah.
That's pretty easy, yeah.
Yeah, and I've also they're white, they're poly white also,
Yep.
and that's it. Yeah.
And way back, you mentioned that you had a DTG machine. I think you may have said you got rid of it, but um, it may not be that you get the call for it with your current business model. But I mean, obviously, as screen printers, we tend to love screen printing, and I kind of hiss and spit a little bit at DTG or direct to film as well now.
Yeah.
And I think there are circumstances where it's worthwhile. And in fact, if we have, a 20 t-shirt order and it's would be full sim process, we just outsource that to a guy in Sydney that we use,
Yep.
just to satisfy the customer. But we do
Yeah.
occasionally think about getting a DTG. I mean, what was your experience of using the one you had? I mean, I know they're slow and quite expensive, but
Yeah.
something that worked for you?
Well, I thought it was a waste of time and money and energy. Really, it was a steep learning curve. I don't know how many hours I put into trialing it to get the white bright enough with the pre-treatment process. Originally, I was hand spraying before. When I purchased the direct-to-garment vinyl cutter, the hat press and the heat press, it also came with some heat transfer vinyl and a pre-treatment machine for the direct-to-garment. But the pre-treatment machine wasn't spraying evenly, which was just a nozzle issue. But before I rectified that, there was a place in Geelong where I lived where I could buy the nozzles and they were cheap. But before I did that, I bought a like a Wagner hand sprayer. I think it was actually a Bosch brand hand spray paint machine thing that a lot of people are using, or they use foam paint rollers and roll on the pre-treatment. I was hand spraying with success. Then I changed the nozzles in the pre-treatment machine, and I also had success like that. But it's a lengthy process in pre-treating, and then printing white on dark garments first, and then this brother machine would print the white, then it would go back in and print the color, come out. And it took quite a while. You need to retrieve the white ink if you're not going to use the machine the next day. And in the end, because I wasn't using the machine a whole lot, I did retrieve the white ink, which wastes some ink in the process. I think it took 15 to 20 minutes per head, and this machine had 2 white heads. It can have 4, this brother machine, which prints quicker. But yeah, it took 30 plus minutes to retrieve the white ink out of those 2 heads. So needing to do that every day, and the waste with that when I was potentially only printing a handful of t-shirts, it wasn't worth the money. And from what I've heard and read in print groups online, more Americans than anything else, I think a lot of people say direct-to-garments are just money pits. Unless you've got a niche or you're lucky, most people you don't make money with them, and they're not even worth getting. I think there's probably an exception with the say Cornet machines, that are $100,000. That have built-in pre-treatment. They're probably quicker. Maybe they're a better machine, easier to use, and quicker, but super expensive too.
I think those big fulfillment companies in the US, when we started, we were doing our own designs, and the market that we were in was the Christian market and the church market, which is somewhat bigger in the US than anywhere really, or maybe not South America. And so we started a company there, and set up some premises just as a mail to address, which we needed there. And we basically just outsourced that to Printify,
Yep.
and, connected it through Shopify and all of that. And eventually it just became too much hassle, and we kind of closed that down.
Right.
But, they're one of those big shops that you're talking about that have those huge DTG machines. But that's the nature of printing. If you're not doing volume, you can't really make money. And so the slower it gets, the worse it's going to become, unless you're on that really big scale. I also have a kind of slight, question about the quality of the inks and, the environmental aspect to the inks. And this is just purist snobbery. I just prefer a screen print, right? Like, I kind of feel like DTG is a little bit cheaty. It's a little bit like, well, you probably don't know how this is made, but it's just a glorified inkjet, really, with different kinds of ink and this pre-treatment. Have you come across an ink called Virus?
I've heard of Virus. The supplier in Geelong, I was using Jones Brothers. They were stocking. Are they stocking Virus? I think that's right. I've certainly heard of it. I've never bought it. The rep, some guy came over from. Is it a UK brand?
I think it's Italy. I think they're Italian. I'm not certain about that. We just started doing some research on them.
I think that's right. Yeah.
And they're vegetable oil based inks.
Right.
So super environmental, but they have a neat CMYK system, which you put on any t-shirt, right? Not just a white t-shirt. In this case, it does an underbase that's very clever. I can't quite get the whole picture on it yet because the data is a little bit misleading, I think. But people are starting to rave about them in the UK, I've noticed. Maybe there's a better supply there. But what they do is they print, they've got full sim process inks as well, but just on CMYK, you lay an underbase down, just give it a quick flash, and then you do the other colors wet and wet, which you'd expect. When it comes around, the platinum's going to need to be super hot. It's not cured, but it's totally dry.
Wow. Okay.
Totally dry. Yeah, interesting. Like a lot of our platins would get quite warm, and the ink would be pretty well dry when it comes around. But and then obviously put them through the oven. So I'm going to try and get a sample of those, but they're not really water based, but they're not really plastisol. So I'm intrigued to see, and looking at the results that you see online, at least they look pretty amazing.
They're great.
So, so I'm going
to
quick look at
I have heard of Virus. I'm not sure where, but I'm getting confused. Sorry, with Magna. Jones Brothers distribute Magna inks, and they've got some good stuff too. I saw a lot of samples a year or so ago when a rep was over. I don't know if Magna are UK based, but someone was over. It's probably from America actually, and he came down with the Jones Brothers guy and showed me all this stuff, and I thought that's great. Don't really have a need for it though. Pretty much 100%.
Well, that's the thing. We're pretty much the same. We do discharge. We do a little bit of water based, but have that same issue you mentioned about drying out because we're so high up, and you're higher up. It's just super arid, right? I mean, it's not at the moment because it's been raining for the last months, but generally, it's dry on the screen before you're flooded almost. It's pretty hard to handle.
I've always loved the that aspect of plastisol, though. I've all my lids of ink, all my tubs of ink, sorry, don't have lids on them. For years I kept the ink on the screen, so I just picked the screen out. If it was a repeat job and I had the image up, the ink's on the screen, and I just get straight in, or I'd know which color it was and just top it up. The ease of plastisol I've just always loved. And I know that there's shops that are 100% water-based or mostly water-based, and they find it easy to work with because they're doing it day in, day out. But I've never got used to it, and I guess I've appreciated the fact that plastisol is so easy to work with. But
same here.
If the need's not there, then
and your customer generally doesn't know. I don't know whether they think that they're all water-based, or they just don't ask, or just don't want to know, but they don't really care. We have had a couple of customers that say, "Oh, we want the underbase to be discharged," and we generally don't do that. So we usually try and reduce the underbase as much as we can, assuming that it's a full print,
Yeah,
full cover print with the other colors. But generally, we find that people don't know, don't really care, don't really want to know. But there's the
exactly.
environmental question, which I think is disposal of the ink. I think is the main
Yeah,
issue really. And I know
that's
some
right.
printing shops practice aren't exactly faithful to the environmental requirements.
Yep.
We try and keep that absolutely schmick. I know you do as well. Feel
Yeah.
like that's a very, very important part of it. When we started out screen printing, and our story is a little different to yours, but it was a hobby. We're doing our own designs, and some people asked us to do some shirts, and we thought, how hard can that be? And it grew from that. But when we first started, the learning curve is vertical.
Mm,
The screen, every aspect of it initially is vertical, as you'd expect. There's no curve at all. Um, but the hardest thing we found was burning a screen, producing a
right.
good film positive output and burning a screen.
Mm,
Um, and people have different views about this. Some people have, better experiences. We weren't burning them in the sun or anything.
yeah,
Some
yeah,
people do that. And you think, oh
yeah.
no, that really is going to be hard. But if you were starting, or if someone came to you and said, I want to start screen printing,
Mm,
what, apart from a press, and inks and things like that,
mm,
um, and they said to you, they asked you the question, what piece of equipment do you think
mm.
I should buy, or what order, should I buy things in? What
Yeah.
would you say to them?
Well, uh, in actuality, I've only really discovered the importance of a very tight mesh in recent years. I've always bought used screens from people that are getting out of the industry or whatever. I've scoured Gumtree and eBay and Marketplace
You,
in recent
you're
years.
you're quite the screen printer hunter, really, aren't you?
Yeah,
You get some really good deals. I know you've spoken about
yeah.
some of them before, but
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I've got some stuff. I've got some stuff I can. Well, I had some stuff. I could tell you some stories, but it's kind of boring. I've always been almost daily. I've been looking on Gumtree and eBay and Marketplace for stuff. But I've bought used screens that usually the tension on them isn't great. And yeah, they work, but um, they also give you problems. If you've got a well-tensioned screen,
mm,
that helps a lot. So I think that's important,
mm,
and that'll help with learning the trade, because it just it snaps off straight away. If you've got a loose mesh, it sticks, and then you have ink sitting in the mesh when you lift the screen, and you just don't get a clean print. So
mm.
I think a well-tensioned screen is super important.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I hadn't
Mm,
thought of that. I mean, we know that from what we do, but that sort of difficulty of learning to actually do the physical printing.
mm.
If you've got a bad screen or a loose screen, it's a disaster. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. And I didn't exactly struggle with that, but I guess, doing a lot of manual printing over the years, and, pull the squeegee and then you sort of wait for the screen to lift off the substrate for a little bit. And you don't get that when you've got a well-tensioned screen. So
Yeah.
it's that waiting, and can obviously cause issues where the ink doesn't transfer properly. So
Or
yeah,
if it
it took me
lifts the
so long to
substrate.
work out. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't learn anything really from my boss. When I started loading shirts on that automatic at the first day or whatever, the guy I was working with, who was a few years older than me, he sort of showed me how to run the machine, and well, this is how you print manually. Whether it's my boss probably showed me a little bit of that, but the screens we had weren't super high tension. They were probably pretty good, but my boss would also, we had clamps to restretch our own screens, and he
Oh
had
wow. Yeah.
steel frames made, by some guy he knew, which were, they're not the right,
Steel
the right.
frames for
Yeah,
screens.
yep,
Man, they must have been heavy.
yeah, they were pretty heavy. I mean, the manual press held them up no problem. It was a good
Yeah.
solid carousel, but my boss is a bit cheap like that, I guess, and yeah, made these still frame screens, which I didn't have a problem at all. Oh, great, whatever, it works. But yeah, I didn't learn anything really from my boss. I learned what I learned, and I still don't know so much about separating, sim process jobs or full color process. I've never done the separation. I've outsourced that, printed the film, but I outsourced the separation of it. I've done very little water-based printing, not a lot of discharge printing. I was actually using 43T screens for bases and top colors until only a few years ago, because they were mostly the screens that I bought used, and it's what I was using to print Rush Vest, because it needed to be a reasonably thick ink deposit, thicker than a t-shirt anyway, to be able to stretch and not crack. So it's only in recent years I'm using sometimes a 55 or a 60, 61, whatever you call them, 54 as a base, and then maybe a 77 for a top. As everybody kind of knows, you don't use the same mesh type for a base and a top color. You can get the moire pattern. But yeah, I was using 43s for 15, 16, 17 years for a base and a top color, which can lead to issues in curing because you've got too thick a deposit. Also, occasionally get a moire effect with the 243 screens, but I never learned any other way. My boss never taught me anything, and I guess I wasn't really interested in researching it online and learning any more about that. But yeah,
in the late 90s, you couldn't research it. You know what I mean? Like, there's just no information.
Yeah, that's right.
You might get a book from one of these famous books that are still around somewhere. Learn how to screen print or whatever. But you couldn't really research very easily.
Yeah, and I guess in the early 2000s, I wasn't using a computer either, so couldn't research online then. But yeah, again, I never had a real thirst to learn more. Anyway, I was happy to be employed. I was not a slacker. I was never trying to pull a sickie. I was always showing up and happy to do a good job. But I wasn't really thirsty for more knowledge about it. But yeah, since learning about a well-tensioned screen just recently, like, I thought, you're an idiot. Why did it take you so long to work that out? Like, I probably read people talk about it before, but I guess not making great money and never wanting to, $60 for a brand new screen. Like, who can afford to buy 10 or 20 of those? Not me. It would have been a great investment to do that, to just make the job a little bit easier, where the screen's sort of sticking a bit and you're waiting before you lift it up.
And you've got to have good people to, you've got to have people can trust to really do good screens. We fell into a really massive hole recently where we had upgraded our screen size to, what is it, 590 by 790 or something like that. It's a pretty big screens. And we bought some secondhand ones from a company that do screens that will remain nameless. We're very fond of them. And they remeshed them for us. And we got, 77s and 90s and 43s. And I think we got 60. And they came in at 24 newtons, good to go. And after one cycle of those screens, they dropped to 7. And And the problem is, you don't measure the Newton of every screen every day, right? Like, something you might think, oh, this is a bit loose, let's just check it. So we kind of were like, what's going on? Running them on the auto, getting smudges, cleaning the screens, thinking, well, too much pressure, is the angle wrong, and then I said, maybe it's the tension, these are effectively new, just normal aluminium frames with new mesh. And we started ticking them off. This is 7, this is 9, this is 12, this is no good at all. And they're going to remesh them for us, but it's a disaster if you haven't got it right.
Exactly. I don't have is it a Newton meter? I've never had one, so you can just tell, obviously, when there's a really lousy tension.
You can straight away, but because these were new, like we've got one and we hardly ever use it, but now we're using it on all these screens,
all the time.
And what's really hard about that is that a couple of those is we use on sim process jobs running on 90Ts, and we keep the screens for the customer. So now we can't. We've got to get them redone. We've got to get the new mesh back in and reburn it and start again, which is super frustrating. Look, just to kind of move to a bit of a close. I mean, you might have some questions for me, and there's no reason that you would. But tips and traps, screen printing tips that you've learned through the years, 20 plus years, 24th year, I think you're in now, and traps to try and stay out of for maybe newbies that are coming in. Got any ideas?
Not really. Well, I mean, it's not any real secret, I guess, but obviously a well-tensioned screen's important. A good sharp squeegee is important. That's a stiff rubber. Soft squeegees are not going to help you at all. Most people know that have been printing for a while. They're handy tips, I think. That the screen tension isn't the most important thing, but a good stiff rubber, squeegee rubber, and a nice sharp, preferably a new squeegee rubber blade, is going to help a lot. What other tips? I mean, off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything else, to be honest. And maybe I'm not the best person to ask anyway, as I'm not
you started
really
on an auto. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Start with the manual.
Yeah. I've certainly done things a little differently to.
It's brilliant.
It's not by choice. It's just how it was. I think it's a good squeegee is super important. Get some quality gear to begin with, or you just going to add headaches to the learning process.
Don't go making everything from Bunnings yourself.
That's right. Yeah.
How can people get in contact with you? Like, what if you want? Like, I know you've got your regular customers, but where do they go online if they want to connect with you?
Well, we have a very basic sort of landing page, tshack.com.au. It's TEESHACK.com.au. tshack.geelong is our Insta page that doesn't really do anything now, but you can find me through there, obviously, if one wishes to do so. But I'm not desperate for customers, so I'm not phased. And why someone would choose to contact me, I wouldn't know. They should be contacting you. You've got the good setup there and great prices, and what you're doing. Even though I've been in this industry quite a bit longer than you.
Heaps longer, man.
But that's how they can find me.
That's cool. Any questions for me?
Not
necessary to have questions, but
you're looking for a new employee?
We got a few.
That's I'm not serious. Any questions?
No. Certainly might be some outsourcing things, as you know.
Well, if the need comes up, Sam, I'm certainly happy to help like that. For sure.
That's good.
Questions for you. Nothing of any real interest, I guess. Questions? No.
You don't have to. It's much easier if you don't. For me. So.
No, I don't really have any. It's a conversation we could have at another time, I guess, just about things. You mentioned the direct to garment. Or do you think you're going to get a direct to garment? I'd advise against it. If you're busy, then they are. You need the work there to make it for it to make you money.
It's interesting. We've got a brand site called Aussie Merch Shop where we float some of our own brands and some customer stuff. And we, customers are sort of beginning suss that out. So new clothing brand companies, for example, who don't want to set up their own e-commerce, and they're happy to do their Facebook page and come up with their designs. And I always try and talk them into plastisol heat transfers, because if their print design isn't too complex, it saves them heaps of money.
Yeah.
Then they try and buy blanks from you, which obviously we don't do. But then they'll come up with something that's got 100 colors in it and expect us to put it on one of our sites and sell it. And I'm sort of looking at that a little bit more, which is what DTG would be good for the fulfillment side.
Yeah.
But I still feel that it's just a massive distraction. Like just the other day, we were kicking out 500, I think the guy said 560 garments an hour.
Yeah, well,
and on an auto, and a couple of 3 minutes for a t-shirt on a DTG, and I just don't think it's financially viable. Like, it's back to the comment you made earlier, and but we're getting asked more and more, and I feel tempted. I mean, we do bag and tag, and obviously do labels, and that's a little bit labor intensive, although we've got quite quick ways of doing that now. So I don't think we will ever go DTG, but it's always sort of gnawing at the back of one's mind. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, without having done a heap of research on direct-to-film, I think that's probably a better option for anyone that might be considering the two. Potentially there's less upkeep of a direct-to-film machine, and probably a cheaper outlay to begin with to buy the machine.
And maybe quicker,
Yeah,
once
that's
it's
right.
printed out, heat press it.
Yep.
But I haven't explored that either. Be interested to look at that.
Yeah.
So Tyler Fort, tshack.com.au. Mate, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, for helping us kick it off. I mean, that's really kind of you. I have this, just a lasting comment, I have this vision now in my head of the T-shirt pro who, who started at literally the deep end. It sounded like you really took that on just phlegmatically, easily, and, not fazed by it. And you've worked out the market, the clients that you need, and you've worked out how to downsize. And I have this image of you getting up somewhat later than me and jumping on your mower and doing a bit of mowing, feeding the chooks at some point, and then doing a bit of printing in the Arvo. It just sounds fantastic, mate.
Yeah, well, I'm still in the process of getting completely the house all set up, and we're mostly there now. But I was tinkering out the back on the deck yesterday with a drill, and I saw what I thought was a dog sort of trot on past me, and I looked up and thought, what was that? And then there was a second kangaroo bounced past me, and I went, what is going on here? There's 2 kangaroos in my yard. I knew there was some just down the street a little bit. There's a new estate, and I've seen a few roos in there. I'm thinking, wow, there's kangaroos here. That's cool. But it blew me away to see, to come up here and have so much wildlife, the birds and kookaburras here, and there's other things like that, you get the rosellas and things like that, and I, my wife and I really enjoy that, and again, it's just, everybody's on their own journey, and everybody has their own needs and desires for things. Being without children has allowed me to end up where I am here now, and still busy with work, which is important because we all need to make an income. But I'm fairly pleased with where we are now, and having sort of come to full circle, as much as an automatic is a real joy to use, just for the ease and getting the job out super quick, and not being as labor intensive. You do need the quantity there to facilitate paying for the space to have it, and then all the other things that come with that. So I'm happy with this new manual. I purchased a bit over a year ago with micro registration, the first machine I've ever had with micros, and that makes a big difference.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it's good. It's good to be. I'm happy here, and hopefully I remain busy. Otherwise, I'm going to come knocking on your door, Sam.
Yeah, I expect you to be here. All right. Well, take care, mate. Thanks so much again for coming on, and have a splendid rest of the day.
No problem. Thanks heaps, Sam. I appreciate being the first on the show.
Yeah, good on you, mate. All right, we'll
Cool.
catch you later.
Cheers, Sam. Bye.
Ciao. The Aussie Screen Printing Club.